What is going on, everybody? It is your boy, Immense. Back at it with another review. And last night, I was able to check out the new film directed by Mel Gibson, that being Flight Risk. But before the actual beginning of the video, so guys, don't forget to subscribe if you're new to the channel. Come on, stop the free number 2. Also made up with the YouTube algorithm, recommended video to more people, and maybe they could join. And do feel free to comment your thoughts on Flight Risk 2025 down below. But with that being said, guys, let's get right into before we get right into let's give a quick plot synopsis, shall we? So, transition into Zambia. A U.S. Marshal boards a small plane to transfer a government witness to New York. As they cross the Alaskan wilderness, tensions start to rise as not everyone on the flight is who they appear to be. Alright, so going into Flight Risk, I saw the trailer like once or twice or a couple times, and from the trailers, I really wasn't expecting much going into it. If it looked like a very low-budget movie, especially with the caliber of the stars that are in it and are producing it, with Mel Gibson directing it. Well, if you like whether you like Mel Gibson or you don't, you always gotta admit, he always does a great job at directing. So that was the one key thing that grabbed my attention. And the cast seemed pretty decent. It had Mark Wahlberg and Topher Grace in it. Also, in the trailer, they had little moments with Mark Wahlberg where his character seemed a little quirky, if that makes sense. Kind of like how Josh Hartnett's character from Trap was. So I was kind of a little hesitant about that, to say the least, walking into this one. And with that being said, let's just go straight into the actual review itself. And depending on how I'm feeling, I might do a spoiler half of this video later on. But we're going to stick to spoiler-free right now, and then we'll see about spoiler review. Alright, so starting off with the good, we always start off with the good here on my movie reviews, and I have the plot. I think the plot is overall very interesting, even though it is very reminiscent of other things, and the execution it's not the best. That's all I'll say. So the plot definitely was the thing that hooked me. Another thing that hooked me the most going into this film. Going like, that could actually be a pretty interesting premise. Also, Mark Wahlberg's over-the-top performance. So, from the trailers, as I said before, I was expecting Mark Wahlberg to kind of be like a little over-the-top in a bad way, but having watched the movie, yeah, I think he's actually the most entertaining part about it. His over-the-top nature definitely helps the type of movie he is in, so actually benefited in the movie quite a bit for me. While that's still being a very, very low bar. So that part definitely surprisingly worked for me, which I was not expecting going into this film. Then the final good I have in here is there are some, like, entertainingly bad moments where, like, you can get some sort of enjoyment from it. But, with that being said, let's just move on to the mixed aspects. And I only have one. And it's the humor. Because there are some unintentional moments of laughter in this movie, and then there's also some, like, intentional moments of laughter, and for the most part, most of the intentional moments of laughter does not land, but there was probably, like, one or two that got a little chuckle out of me, but while still not being very hilarious at all. So there's that. Now, unfortunately, we move on to the bad, and this is gonna be the whole rest of the video. Topher Grace's performance. Don't get me wrong, I really dig Topher Grace as an actor, and he gets a lot of flack for him playing Eddie Brock / Venom in Spider-Man 3, which I actually think he's okay in that. But in this, his performance was very, I hate to say this word, but use this phrase, but felt very over the top at points and very, like, hyper, you know? I don't know how to explain it. Over the top and over dramatic or whatever, and you can tell it's not really good acting, unfortunately. Another thing in here, the dialogue. The dialogue and let's just do the dialogue and how the movie is written with the story as it plays along. There are some, like, as for the entertainingly bad moments I had earlier for the solid moments, there's moments of dialogue that happen in here where it was unintentional laughter from me. And I was going like, what are you doing? Who wrote that? And I'll get more in depth with spoilers possibly later on in this video if I decide to talk about spoilers. But the dialogue in here, man, woof. How the story plays out, they make some very, very weird story decisions as the movie goes along from the whole entire, the killer is trying to kill or take the convicted convict and take him into the big boss or whatever. I don't know how to explain it, but because it's the plot, and that's not a spoiler, by the way. This is still spoiler-free part. But how the story plays out, they make some decisions with other side little plots to connect to things, and I was going, what are we doing here? How's that physically connect with that? And it's just one of them was just came out of nowhere. It was just hilariously bad that they decided to do that. Another thing, the logic in here, the logic along with character decisions. There is some character decisions in here that are like so dumb that no one in the right set of mind would do that at all. I won't go too in depth again, as I said before, but there's moments where I'll give an example, but I'm not gonna. Okay, they leave. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that. I'll save that for later, because I actually have to. I actually got to talk spoilers for that later. But yeah, logic and character decisions in here, and and you see it in the trailers. They decide to not kill Mark Wahlberg's character, which is just a stupid decision, and they don't kill him because he knows how to fly the plane, and Topher Grace's character is going like, he's not going to tell us how to fly the plane. So why don't you just kill him? That would be the most obvious decision in real life. Anyways, Mark Wahlberg's bald cap effects, like, man, dude, what did they do with his bald cap? And that's the, like, key, one of the most memorable parts of the trailer with it was his very, very bad makeup bald cap. Another thing in here, the CGI and green screen. And I originally thought this in the trailers, too. The CGI and green screen in here is terrible, and it's pretty much in one whole entire setting, really. And there's not really much outside of the plane to see. And I think it's all just CGI and green screen for the most part, which it all looks pretty rough. Which, that brings me to another thing. This movie cost $25 million. And watching it, I found that very hard to believe, because this movie might as well have been made for like $5 million, $1 million, even maybe like $700,000. That's what I was at least thinking in my head. There's no way that this is $25 million. Absolutely no way. And it is, and they use that budget terribly, unfortunately. So, yep. Another thing, the dubbing in here. So, if you recall from last year, we had very bad instances of terrible dubbing from last year. You had Madam Web and you had Kraven the Hunter, where you would have them literally speak and their mouths not even move in sync with the dialogue at all. And that happens again in here. It happens, like, I don't know, midway into the movie. I was going, dang, this has bad dubbing too. And yeah, for the most part, all I'll say is I think the dubbing is better than Madam Web and Kraven the Hunter, and there's like only two instances where it's bad dubbing and they use dubbing. So there's that. Most of it is just them using the line. So there's that. Final bad in here, I have the similarities to Carry On. It's another generic January horror movie, which, well, not horror movie, sorry. January movie in general. Like, because January has had a lot of crap movies over the years. We all know this. And, like, there's been rare exceptions here and there. Like, last year we had The Beekeeper, and I thought that was pretty fun. Then the year before that we had Megan, which I thoroughly enjoyed that. Can't wait for the second film. This is another one to add to the list, and it's just another Die Hard ripoff that Carry On did so much better than this. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen, for my spoiler-free thoughts on this film. With that being said, let's bring out the toxic meter, and I'm going to give this a toxic trash. And this is my pick as of right now for the worst film of the year so far, and we're only in January. If there's more movies like this or worse, oh, help us all. But you know what? Yeah, since I mentioned it earlier, let's talk spoilers for this thing, because I got to talk about some of this stuff. First thing I gotta talk about is the beginning of the film here. So, and also, if you guys do not want to hear spoilers, click off the video right now. Anyways, but the beginning of the film, there's a CGI moose. Terrible CGI at all. It's a terrible CGI. Very, very terrible. And they possibly could even have just grabbed a real deer and thrown it into the screen, thrown it on in front of the camera. They could have done that instead, but they did a CGI moose that looked absolutely horrible, and I don't understand why they decided to do that. And probably it would be way less expensive to get a regular moose. But anyways, another thing to talk. The introduction of Mark Wahlberg is so silly later on in the movie, because anyone in a right mindset would have gone, yeah, this guy's definitely messed up. Well, why don't we just walk or take a car instead of flying with this guy? And they have many chances to do that before the flight actually takes place. So, and I made fun of it at the beginning of this video. It's just, who would go with this man? And there's plenty of signs on him too that he's definitely trouble, where he has a little scratch on his neck, he has a little dot of blood on his shirt, and okay. Anyways, there's that. Also, okay. One of the more enjoyable parts of the movie that actually kind of made me laugh. There was a joke in here. So, Mark Wahlberg's character has like a southern accent where he's trying to be like, from, you know. Anyways, he has a southern accent, and why am I blinking out here? Topher Grace makes an inbred joke because it's from Utah. So Mark Wahlberg pretends to be from Utah and like makes a redneck joke, and I think that was pretty funny. That was the only like intentional laughter that I actually got. So there's that. Another, I already talked about that earlier. I'm not talking about the obvious dubbing again. Mark Wahlberg gets knocked out and clearly moves and opens his eyes. So when Mark Wahlberg in here first gets knocked out near the beginning of the film, and this is one we've seen from the trailers, when Topher Grace's character and what's the actress's name? Michelle Dockery, when them two are trying to move him, to handcuff him to that this little belt or whatever, there's a clear moment where you can see Mark Wahlberg's eyes open when he's getting carried. And then also, in the background, when Topher Grace and Michelle Dockery are trying to find out how to fly the plane, and there's a clear moment, even though Mark Wahlberg, even though Mark Wahlberg has his eyes closed, for some reason, he's still he's trying to pick the lock. And I don't even know if that was intentionally supposed to happen, or actually, like, the character was supposed to be, like, knocked out still. I don't know, but it was very crazy. It was like, okay, I don't know what's going on there, because he wakes up a little later on in the film. There's some also there's some just questionable dialogue in here. Like, Mark Wahlberg's character, all I'll say, I won't go too in depth with this because, but there's a dialogue in here from Mark Wahlberg's character where he keeps on saying he's going to, how do I say this without getting demonetized before getting monetized? Where he's gonna have fun with the two characters. Meaning, the little purple and green fruit that starts with a G. And you take the G out of the word. He makes a lot of dialogue about that, how he's going to do that to them and stuff. And I just thought that was very questionable. Why was that needed? Anyways, and he doesn't just say it once. He says it over and over and over and over and over again. And it's just, why? Why did we have to have that said so many times? And it's just, like, he constantly says it. And it's going like, what? I mean, like, come on. Okay, this is the so, like, unintentionally funny part. So, while Michelle Dockery and Topher Grace are trying to fly the plane, she's calling people with her headset or whatever, trying to find out where to land this thing because there's no GPS or anything. So she randomly talks to this guy, and he randomly tries to flirt with her and also asks her out on a date. In a life-threatening situation, mind you. And if anyone were to do that in real life, I bet they would get fired. Anyways, but it's just it was so yeah. How emotionless and over-the-top acting performances are from Topher Grace and Michelle Dockery. So, as I mentioned before, like, Topher Grace in here also, so, because Mark Wahlberg, as I mentioned before, was saying, oh, I'm gonna fruit you, or whatever, and Topher Grace, after Mark Wahlberg gets knocked out, Topher Grace is going like, oh, he's gonna fruit me, and it didn't really, it was very over the top again as well. Michelle Dockery, I think she had no emotion in a couple of scenes in here, at all, basically. There's moments where she does okay, but overall, she still does pretty bad in this movie, unfortunately. How the movie also uses, I already talked about that. I'm not talking about that again. I'm not ranting about that again. The landing of the plane and the Mark Wahlberg freeing himself. So the ending of the film, so obviously they end up surviving somehow. So they end up landing the plane. Topher Grace has already been stabbed. So there was this one really good scene where Mark Wahlberg did, like, free himself from his handcuffs by, I didn't know if he broke his finger or ripped his finger off. One of the two, trying to break the handcuffs off. That was a pretty gnarly sequence. Then the plane lands, and it's having a hard time landing, so it's still going. It's on the ground, but it's still, like, moving super fast. Mark Wahlberg flies out of the car. Flies out of the plane, then gets run over by a truck. And a terrible CGI there. And the ending of the film, basically, Topher Grace is alright. They both make it out, but then I forgot to talk about this whole entire mystery that's going on in the film a little bit earlier on. But there's this mystery with, one of the people Michelle Dockery works for is one of the bosses or whatever with the people with Mark Wahlberg trying to capture Topher Grace. And then you have this police officer trying to kill Topher Grace, but last second Michelle Dockery ends up saving him, and after she saved him and kills the guy, Topher Grace goes, oh, what a day. And and it's just, hey, and then the movie just ends. Yeah, this, as of right now, is my pick for the worst movie of the year. Out of all the ones I've seen, I think I've seen 6 or 7. One of the two numbers in there, or 8. I don't even know. I've almost seen 10 movies this year. This is my worst one. And I even liked the newest Netflix movie, Back in Action, more than this one. Which, that says a lot, because straight to Netflix movies are pretty bad nowadays. And Back in Action, I think, was more entertaining than this. So, and on top of that, I also forgot to mention, this movie also just does the same exact thing over and over again. So it makes the movie very, very slow. But, still, it's still not an F tier movie. There were some things of merit that I thought stopped it from getting the F tier. With Mark Wahlberg's over-the-top performance, some entertainingly bad moments. The whole entire plot I thought was interesting, and that one scene where Mark Wahlberg tries to free himself near the end of the movie. I thought those were fine, or decent enough that can't make it so bad. But, ladies and gentlemen, that is just my thoughts on Flight Risk. Be sure to let me know your thoughts down below. I feel as if more people are going to have a guilty pleasure time with this one than I am, but, with that being said, guys, I'll see y'all next one, everybody. Peace.